go back a little bit to your point when you're talking about, what I could do with pickpocketing and stuff. I actually do have an interesting story. There was a moment where, as a magician, I usually work at night, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to get, there's a thing called reserve officers. And I thought it would be interesting to get, you have to volunteer as an officer like 1 to 2 days a month. And I thought it would be fascinating to get all the training and the experience. And, I've had the opportunity to perform magic in jail. And as I said before, I performed for some of the wealthiest people in the world. But they've seen a lot of magic in their life. They've flown to Vegas. They've seen Copperfield. They've got to see, experience all that stuff. And so sometimes for me, it's really fun to perform for people who have never seen magic before. That's almost far more heartwarming, and the reactions are better. But long story short, I was interested in just getting this training. And they also have actually, let me pause. First of all, I'm in LA, and I was like, do I want to go for the LA Sheriff Office or the LA PD? And I asked my girlfriend at the time, which uniform is sexier? And she said, "Oh, go for the sheriff." She likes the hats. So I went LA Sheriff. And anyway, so I go in, and there's like an online interview. I do the online interview, and then there's like an SAT like test that you have to go and take in like the headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. And we went to Princeton. We're good at standardized testing, and it's like you have like 4 hours and you need to get 70%, and it's like 30 minutes 98% later, like I was done with the test. But they very specifically said you can't take anything with you because they don't want somebody cheating. So no cell phone on you. No, usually I carry a pack of cards with me everywhere I go. But I didn't want to have that with me because maybe people might think the cards were cheating notes or whatever, crypt notes. So anyway, I do the test, and then they had said, if you pass the test, we'll call you back and we'll schedule an interview. So I was expecting that, but then right away they're like, oh, you can have your first interview now. And I would have, I was dressed in like sweatpants and like almost like a tank top because, I was just going there for the test. I was just being relaxed, and I was not, if I'm meeting up with somebody for an interview, I'm going to wear at the very least a polo, if not a shirt, if not a suit, And I'm like, you have to do it now. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting with this guy, and he's like straight out of Super Troopers. He was super nice, but he had that mustache. I forget his name, but it was like Officer Steve Joe Hansen. It was like something like that. And he's like, oh, so you're a magician, so you got to do a trick on me. And I'm like, like, deputy, I would love to, but they told me I can't take anything with me, so I don't have anything with me. I would, maybe if I stick around and I meet you again, I can. And he's like, oh, okay. And then I'm looking at him, and I noticed something, and I'm like, I thought of something. I don't know if this will work, but do you mind if I try something? And if it doesn't work, just like give me permission to try something. And he says, okay, sure. And the reason why I had asked this is I kind of had noticed his driver's license. As we were walking, I saw it in his pocket, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to pickpocket his driver's license. But I didn't want to take the driver's license from like the head of the first round of recruiting, like in the middle of LA Sheriff headquarters, and like not have permission, because that could have been bad news bears. So anyway, I take the driver's license and I do like quick move. Suddenly his driver's license, the second I have it in, 3 seconds later, it's in my wallet in the slot where my driver's license would be. And then the rest of like the 30-minute interview, like I'm like I have a half sister who's Italian and lives in Milan, but I'm like her. I'm just talking with my hands all day, so all he can remember is my hands in my face and his face. And that's all he can see. And end of the interview, he's like, oh, it was lovely meeting you. And I'm like, oh, but he's like, do you have any final words? And I'm like, oh, I just thought of something, deputy, which might mess with my application. I have a problem with my license. And he's like, oh, what do you mean? And I reach in, I pull my wallet out, I open it up. And instead of having my driver's license in there, I have his driver's license in there. Now this guy grabs it, and he just runs down the hallway screaming like a giddy school child, being like, and there's like a place where you had to go and get like fingerprints and stuff, and he's running down there, and he's like, watch out, you're gonna try to take his fingerprints, but he's gonna steal your watch, blah 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 blah. And then meanwhile, there's all these dudes that are waiting to be interviewed, and I spoke with them while I was in line. And they're like, well, I was there for the reserve. These are guys fresh out of the military. They're like super by the books. Like there's like, there's paperwork. And I'm like, it says here, have you ever smoked pot? And if so, how often? It's like, did you like, and I'm like, what did you say? Because like I live in LA, whatever, And then they're like, I would never smoke pot. It is federally illegal. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm sorry. So it was like those type of guys. but they're sitting there waiting to be interviewed, and they're watching their interviewer running around like, oh my God, I just got robbed. So it was very funny.
And it was all positive reactions out of him.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. He's like, turn around, you're arrested right after that.
Yeah, exactly.